what is your therapist writing down in their notes? Well, I'm going to show you what I write down as a therapist and how my notes work. This is obviously going to be a very quick version. A client would be in the room for an hour when I'm doing a first session, but I'm going to show you as quickly as I can the type of thing that I'm looking for and what it is I'm writing down. And I can show you that I'm not writing down every single thing you say. I'm listening to what you say for patterns and words and key phrases. So once everybody's comfortable, this is the first thing any good therapist will do, is build a relationship. So I'm not writing anything down when I'm just chatting to you about what you do for a living or where you come from or anything. These are all just things that I'm using just so that we can build a bit of a relationship, so that you can see that I'm okay and that you can trust me and that I'm okay to be around. And the first question I ask anybody and everybody is, why are you here? Let's imagine that you then talk for 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, what I'm listening for is I'm listening for these key phrases and key words. So let's imagine that this person turns around and says that they're anxious. Now, they might then give me like 6 or 7 examples of where they're anxious, but what I'm looking for is I'm looking for where that's happening. So I might write down something like work, or I might write down something like family. Now, what I'm also going to be listening for is where you tell me where it doesn't happen. So let's say that you say, but see, when I'm out with my friends, I'm absolutely fine. I might write down something, okay with pals, or something like that. Please don't criticise the state of my handwriting. I write very fast. And I can understand it. Hopefully you can too. So I would write that down. I'd more than likely, actually, to be honest, I'd probably highlight that because that's important to me. Because what that's shown me is where the person's anxiety disappears. Because for anybody that's anxious, we're not anxious all the time. We're anxious some of the time. But there are places and contexts where it will lift, even if it's temporary or even if it's just pushed into the background. Now, what I want to do is these words here, work and family, are now overgeneralizations. Now, let's say that the person says, like, it's been like this since I was young. Now, I'm going to write down something like since young. That is important. In fact, just for you, I am going to highlight this since young, and I want that as important. But let's say I just thought, right, okay, that's the important stuff, but I'm just going to focus on the work thing. So I'd say, okay, tell me about what happens in work when you get anxious. Again, you might give me very specific situations, but let's just imagine that as I go through, I start to notice a bit of a trend. Now, if I've not asked you the question, what I might do is I might write a wee question mark, which gives me a thing of, I've not asked you about that yet. But let's just say that I managed to work some questions round. Like, so what are you worried about will happen in work if X happens? Or what do you think will happen? And then what the client says is something, oh, I'm worried about what people think of me, or something like that. Then I will start to go, right, okay, so that is judgment. I've now asked you, I can now delete that. If you said something such as, it's just like it's just like my dad used to do, I might put wee inverted commas and actually write that down. It's just like my dad used to do, because these specific, if I put quotation marks around something, then that's a direct quote from the client, because that's now tied me back in here into family. So now I'll say, okay, so tell me more about when you say just like my dad used to do, what that was about. And then let's say that there's a big story. Again, I'm not going to be writing down all of this story, but I'm listening for is keys. Now, I might actually, if I think about this, not write any of that down. My next thing that I'm more than likely going to write down is, can you tell me your earliest memory of that happening? Like, if I was to ask you, like, when it changed, like, let's say that dad just did, it was about exams, right? Let's say, and perfectionist. I write something like that down. And I'll say something like, okay, what's your earliest memory of that happening? What's your earliest memory of judgment? So I'm interested in this judgment piece. And the person says something like, now, not everybody can get this, but let's just imagine that this client then says, well, it was when I was 7, I always remember coming home and there'd been like a spelling competition in school, and my dad had made me practice and practice and practice, and I came second. What I'm going to write down is spelling competition. I'll probably just tie it in to dad as well with a wee arrow. So again, my notes tend to be quite messy, but they make sense to me. And what I'm trying to do is build connections. Now, you see, the thing now is, even though this has come off this work spiral here, and it's come off this, and this line is kind of followed down here, and I've got to 7, actually everything's connected. It's very, very rare that someone will say that they're anxious about work and the actual cause of that anxiety is in their work. It's not impossible, but it's very unusual. It will normally come from much earlier in life, and I now have that, and I have a tie-in, obviously, to family because of dad. What's also been said, and I'll make this the last thing in this video, just so you see kind of how a first session would go, is this bit here where somebody's saying they're okay with their pals. And I'll say, right, but you said you were okay with friends, so tell me about that version of you. Now, I'm going to write a very specific thing down at this time. I'm going to write down the word parts, because the type of therapy that I do works on this concept of parts, that your brain is separated into lots of different mini brains. It's like lots of mini yous who all apply different contexts. Now, I've already got one of these parts. One of these parts is a fear of judgment. Obviously, in a full hour, I'd probably have gone into how that judgment affects them, what their physiological symptoms are, how they know that it's happening, what the signs are, so I would have a lot more information. I might not actually write that down, because that's not necessarily important. What's important is I've got this part. Now, I know that the other part exists here, again, in this okay with pals bit. So I just need to ask about that. Now, let's say, imagine the person says, well, when I'm with my friends, I'm like a different person. That's a big key to me. And I'm like a different person because I'm so confident. I love to socialise. And now what I've got is I've got everything I need. I now understand, at least at a high level, what it is that's going on. Now, I don't have any detail yet, but I have enough to, at least with my type of therapy, to begin to be able to make a change. This doesn't happen this quickly. I will now ask a lot of questions about confident social them. And the other thing that I might do at this stage is a thing, I'm going to try and draw it, not that I normally would, but just because it means that you're looking at things, is that I'd normally talk about my magic wand. This is a magic wand, imagine this. I'm trying not to make that look phallic, so I'm just going to just delete that, right, okay. Anyway, once I know enough, what I then start to do is I'd start to put this person into different situations where I think that on a very low level, on a very safe level, I can trigger this judgment anxiety. And so this might be scenarios such as, okay, let's imagine that we were on a night out and somebody comes up and says, why is it that you're wearing those shoes? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put the person into this and then fire off a judgment thing. My hope is that the person will go, oh no, that wouldn't bother me at all. Of course it wouldn't, because it's not performance related, it's appearance related. So what I'm trying to show them is they're not anxious about judgment in every context. Then what I might do is I say something like, right, imagine that you're out with your friends and you're out on a night out, and what happens is that somebody walks over and goes, hi you, and it happens to be your boss or people from work. What happens? And in this, what I'm trying to fire off is that kind of paternal judgment in the social situation to show that actually what has to happen is that work context has to come into that situation for it to be fired. Now, in this, even if I don't find out what I want, I'll still be finding out really, really useful information about how these two parts function and how the person jumps in between the different two of them. This is what I would be writing down. This actually is a set of notes that I would not be surprised to find that I took at the end of a session. Some therapists take much more detailed notes, some don't take any notes at all, but this would be the type of thing that I would have. Now, what would I be doing next? Number one would be when you came back for your next session, we'd be dealing with this. And this is a really, really interesting intervention called a parts integration, which is really fascinating and amazing. If that went well, what we'd then be dealing with in the next session, we'd be dealing with this. Now, I'd be doing a wee bit more clarity just to make sure we're absolutely right back to the right place. And then once we've done those two, what I'd be doing is I'd be baselining again. And then I'd be saying to you, okay, how have you been feeling? What's been going on? And what's been happening? And we'd not go back to the beginning, but we'd now be saying, okay, what difference have these two things made in your life? And if they've made a big difference, then fantastic. We're maybe already into a space where we're starting to wind things down. We might need a little bit of coaching or something else, but I wouldn't know until I've dealt with these two things. So if you're ever wondering what it is that your therapist has written down in their notes, well, this is what I would write down. Well, maybe not if you came in, you might do different things, but I'm not writing down everything. I'm just looking for patterns. And when I can find those patterns, then I can help you. If you like this and if you enjoyed this, please follow the page and wherever you are, or subscribe to the page because there's so much more to show you about this, and I'd love to show you more.